stories from around the corner
and around the country.
You're listening to All the Best.
Proudly supported by the Art Gallery of New South Wales.
You're listening to All the Best from FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Madhura Prakash. Before we get into this week's stories, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm recording from stolen Gadigal land and pay my respect to Gadigal elders past and present, and also recognise that the area where FBI Radio is situated, Redfern, has long been a place of storytelling, strength, resistance, and resilience for First Nations communities. This week, stories about how having ADHD can impact a person's life, relationships, and identity. Today in Australia, more than 1 million people have ADHD, according to the ADHD Foundation Australia. The rise of ADHD diagnoses and general talk about the condition might seem sudden, but it can be attributed to many things. There's more research, more big pharma money being put into advertising ADHD medication, and most of all, more information spread to the public via social media. With the prolific nature of ADHD in our modern conversation comes more confusion. So, according to the DSM-5, ADHD can be classified as primarily hyperactive, so displaying more overt or disruptive symptoms, can also be primarily inattentive, so having more forgetful or dreamy symptoms. But it can also be both, and also often exists alongside the ability to focus intensely on one task, or hyperfocus. So the symptoms of ADHD itself can be sometimes contradictive or quite disparate, and these are then again reflected in wildly different ways depending on a person's age, gender, and other factors. Additionally, while ADHD medication levels have more than doubled in the past 5 years, there are many people who, via the public healthcare system, struggle to even get a diagnosis, with the wait times stretching to sometimes over a year. The public system often doesn't cater to adults, who are then pushed to use the private system, and even with just limiting to children, the public system in some places is being pushed to the point where there is still no access. While much controversy surrounds ADHD, it's important to reflect on the stories of people who are experiencing life affected by having it. That's what you'll be hearing for the rest of this week's ep. In our first story, often late Felicity speaks to her slightly frustrated husband about how ADHD has impacted their relationship
to your ADHD
dynamic.
child psychology appointment, and your husband makes a comment about your tardiness, it turns out that this is enough red flags for the psychologist to ask the question, "Oh my God, do you have ADHD too?" Well, yeah, I think so, after what I've read, but I've lived with it this long and survived, so I don't think it really matters. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Maybe you should ask your husband what he thinks." And so I did. This is going to be worse than therapy. And what's the date? Is it Thursday? Okay, my love, when did we first meet?
We met in 1998.
Can you tell me what you remember about me being late?
Yeah, you were always a bit late and a bit frantic. Time is not really something that governs how you operate. You rarely know what day it is, what day of the week. I might say, we're seeing so-and-so tomorrow. And you're like, oh no, that's on Thursday. And I'm like, Thursday's tomorrow. Like that happens a lot. Time is not important to you. So we were always late arriving at people's places, mainly because, well, you have an attitude of being early is rude. And so you don't want to be early. It's like a fear of being early.
Since I have never been on time, it also means I've never been ready when guests arrive, so on time is early. Once or twice I have been early and it made me feel physically sick.
You have a inclination to not account for travelling time, so you don't think you're late until the time we need to be somewhere passes, even though we have travel time to factor in.
I've always considered myself to be an optimist. I think it takes 5 minutes to leave the house, and I'm consistently perplexed at how I have managed to be late again. Little did I realise that being late was more than a character flaw, but a sign of something more. What about when we had to catch a plane somewhere?
Well, yes, there was. We did go to Cairns, and when we collected our bag, it had a sticker on it that said last bag. So clearly we were running late for that.
And how does that make you feel?
I hate it. It makes me feel anxious, sometimes angry and frustrated.
I'm often apologetic when I'm late, although not usually to any family member who is late with me. Sorry. I get that it's my fault, that I might not be allowed into the theatre as the play has started, or I'm late to the appointment, but I usually get there in the nick of time, and most people, excluding my friends and family, aren't aware of the chaos it takes me to get there. Sometimes I'm late because I have another blind spot, and this is that I lose things all the time, which turns out is another common trait for people with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD.
That is a constant source of amusement, but it can also be frustrating, particularly if the thing that you're looking for is preventing us from leaving the house. But you have quite a unique relationship to losing things. The keys to the car or the house were the obvious ones. So I know that when I lose things, I'm a bit driven to find that thing, and so I'm tearing everything up to try and find it, whereas you just like, oh, I've lost it. It'll show up. You don't really worry about it. But yeah, you're very relaxed about losing things, but you do lose things constantly, whether they're reading glasses, phone, pens, losing clothes or scarves or sunglasses. You kind of just put things down and move away, and you usually accuse me of hiding them. Which is obviously not true. But it's usually quite hilarious when you accuse me of hiding something and then you find it in the place you left it. Like you've lost so many AirPods so many times. Like you'll put them in your bra and you'll get undressed and your AirPod will fall out and you're like, oh, I was looking for that. I mean, everyone loses keys, but like they could literally be anywhere. You've found a novel approach of dealing with that by having a car that doesn't require a key, renovating the doors so that they don't require keys, so everything's touchpad or code, or phone operated.
Unlocked.
I generally never leave the house without returning at least twice to get the things I've left behind. My darling husband will either be stressed or laugh as he says, "Goodbye, Captain Chaos," as I rush out the door for the third time, running late, of course. On the upside...
Well, you were fun and funny and not very serious, which was part of the fun. You've always been very energetic and passionate. I just thought you were youthful and carefree. I wanted weekends to be quiet relaxation times, and I felt like you wanted weekends to be scheduled and social. Almost felt like if we didn't have something on, that was a fault or there was a problem. So you were always looking to put something in the calendar, and often like an impossible schedule. I'm more of an introvert, so I'm kind of like, one thing per weekend would be fine. But you were like, no, we'll go and visit these people, and then we'll go out to dinner, and then then we'll go and see a movie, and then we'll go visit family, and and I was just like, I would remember saying often when I'd get to work on a Monday and people would say, "How was your weekend?" I'd be like, "I'm just glad to be back at work so I can relax."
How can being an extrovert who loves doing everything be a red flag? I mean, maybe for my introverted husband, But to be honest, deep down, I'm sure he really loves this about me.
You'll put all your effort and energy into something and you're just like so into it. And like you just won't stop until you're physically exhausted. Like if you get into a state of flow, you know, if you get into something, yeah, it's like a motor. You're not going to stop until it runs out of fuel. You know, that's something I'm very aware of, because you might do something and you just keep going until, like I think you said multiple times, that sometimes you'll start hearing the birds start chirping because it's now the next morning and you're like, oh crap, I need to get into bed before my family wake up and I'm going to get in trouble. Like you can just go. But then you'll crash and then you might be in bed all day and then you can't sleep the next night. And so this cycle of boom and bust kind of repeats itself. It's like an imbalance. So it's all or nothing. I don't know, sometimes it feels like for you it's actually motivating or the only mode.
It's definitely not the only mode, but the middle of the night gives me quiet with few distractions. It's where I taught myself the curriculum for high school. It's where I can focus. It's where I'm writing this piece right now. And if I stop, I know it'll be hard for me to start again, because starting and getting stuck are very real challenges for me.
Well, I think the most common one that I can think about is just not getting out of bed in the morning, waking up and then just like lounging in bed for me, an uncomfortably long time. I'm more inclined to jump up and get out of bed and go and eat, get on with the day.
And what about getting home but not coming in and just sitting in the car?
Yes. Yeah, that happens quite a bit. So you're in the car, on the phone or listening to a podcast or an audiobook or whatever the case is.
How annoying is that for you?
It can be annoying depending on the situation, I guess. Again, it feels, sometimes I'm like, feel jealous. I just want you to come in and say hello or to be with us or to help out, or it feels like avoidance of mundane things. Yeah, I think it's just struggling with the transition and maybe feeling overwhelmed as well about what to do that day, and so avoiding it, procrastinating, starting stuff.
I think as I'm so involved with what I do, when I stop I need a break before I move on to the next thing. The car ends up being the break. I've never been a morning person, which to some feels like a blemish on my personality. I wake up, check my calendar, I think about my day ahead, make grand plans, and then I just can't get up. Hey Google, turn off the alarm.
I used to say that your emotions were like, steep mountains, highs and lows that come frequently, whereas I felt like my emotions didn't have the high highs, didn't have the low lows, and were a lot less frequently changing.
And how was that, having such high highs and low lows? Like, what did you think of that?
When we first met, it was fun because it was like exciting and there was lots of things changing and you never knew what was going to happen. But there are also times where I find it exhausting, myself. I would say it must be so hard being you. And then I'd say it's so hard me being with you. Well, I think that just speaks to the kind of intensity with which you live life. So everything was amplified.
Yep. Despite this family joke, I hadn't truly realised how hard it was being me and how hard it was living with me. And it took about a year post-ADHD diagnosis, a lot of reading and some therapy to really understand that. You can see how this disorder, for the last century, has described people with it as being defective of moral control, feeble-minded or emotionally disturbed. And to be honest, that is how I've thought of myself, and worse. The diagnosis revealed that my brain has a dysfunction in the frontal cortex, which leads to things like time blindness. This impacts my ability to perceive the passage of time, estimate how long tasks will take, and often results in overcommitting, procrastination, difficulties with planning, and of course, lateness. It explained why I'm constantly trying to better myself but feel like it's never enough. Why I fight messiness and disorganization, but sadly replaced it with perfectionism. Why I can't stop and read a novel, but I can listen to an audiobook as I walk or drive. It explained why I'm so intense and emotional, which was fine for most people in my life, as I have such enthusiasm, but I'll explode at my family when I'm tired and overwhelmed. And my empathy is next level, that I feel grief and sadness so intensely. I remember you saying, I don't want you to get diagnosed. I like you're quirky. I don't want that to change. What do you think's changed since I've been diagnosed and medicated?
I think this is difficult for me to answer because, when you first started medication, this calmness or clarity that came to you, that certain thoughts that you used to have would maybe disappear or not be so prevalent. And I think sometimes that created an expectation as well around certain behavior or certain habits or routines that I thought, oh, maybe that, thing that Felicity does that annoys me is now going to disappear. But
Like what?
Like maybe being late to places or leaving piles of clothes or just, housekeeping, those kind of things. I don't know if I notice much change in behaviors. You're still extremely driven, you still, get hyper-focused, maybe just hyper-focused on different things. So I still see you working hard on a project or a thing, and then just giving it your all. You still, have a tendency to put too much in the calendar, commit to helping people at the expense of your own kind of well-being. I guess maybe it's probably inside your head, maybe things are different and improved, and that's a good outcome. But yeah, it's not like a miracle jug where, all of these attributes that, I wanted to change have, miraculously disappeared and you've become someone else. You're still fundamentally the same person.
Yep, that's right. I'm still the quirky person I've always been, but what's changed for me is everything. When society judges you for what they think are character flaws, you're also harsh on yourself. So knowing it's a condition I was born with makes me kinder to me and also kinder to my family. Since ADHD is as genetic as height, I'm surrounded by it. So I now understand my family's challenging behaviours. I feel grateful I know why, and sad that those relatives before me didn't know. To have medication that quietens the racing and persistent thoughts is incredibly calming. And it's only then that I realised that this was how most people felt every day, and how much easier that was. I now have insight into not trusting my sense of time. I'm even okay with getting somewhere early, which rarely happens. But best of all, our family are kinder to each other, and we genuinely laugh at the quirky traits we all have. Thank you, my love.
Thank you.
Hey Siri, set alarm for 7:15. Get out of bed.
Done.
That story was produced by Felicity Weaver. The supervising producer was Gemma Purvis. In our next story, experiences of ADHD from various students in the Chinese community.
It only happened when I first started my PhD, but I found myself get distracted really easily. And I just found everything has been so overwhelming to me. Like I haven't never experienced this before.
This is Michelle Xu. She is a PhD student at Monash University. I noticed that she spoke quickly and was thinking actively.
I actually realized I may have ADHD after I graduated from a uni master degree. During my studying period, I feel hard to concentrate on paper reading or finishing assignment on time.
This is Jiacheng Wang. He graduated from Melbourne University last year. He was 20 minutes late on the day of the interview. He told me later that it took a lot of him to accept my interview request.
在没有了解到 ADHD
didn't think I was sick when I didn't know about ADHD. I thought it was because of laziness and lack of effort, which put a lot of pressure on my mind.
This is Zhao Han Wang. He dropped out of his honors degree at Sydney University and went back to China.
When I was little, I was constantly get told off that I need to shut my mouth and do my work, and I need to talk less because I'm not behaving like a girl. For the Chinese community, they feel like ADHD is a term more to do with hyperactivity instead of inattention. Because I'm a girl raised in Chinese culture, I'm really good at masking myself. I'm really good at obeying to social norm, obeying to what people think I should behave as.
During the time I grew up, I'm not a good kid, always get into trouble. After 12 years old, I basically never do homework anymore. I got suspended from school multiple times.
他们会进行体罚。
They will physically punish me. They will verbally attack and punish me in class.
I didn't think it was an issue until I saw a post on social media, and I found a lot of symptoms overlapped with mine really, really well. And that's how I started my diagnosis journey.
For me to make the decision to see a GP, that took me 2+ months. And the pre-research took me a lot of time as well. I would say I have some good information on Reddit and on social media. But the actual help from someone else that trying to guide me through this process and tell me what I'm facing right now is probably zero.
During the diagnosis period, I feel like one thing is the waiting time is too long. And the second thing is it's just too expensive, way too expensive. And I need to ask for help, for financial support from my partners already.
Money is a very big thing, but the first thing I have to look into is whether I can get the right treatment. Are they available to give me the real diagnosis? It is really hard to get a Mandarin psychiatric.
学校在这方面对我的帮助是非常大。
The university helped me a lot. I could finish my degree with 40% help from medication and 60% emotional and practical help from school and teachers.
When I asked them what they would like to say to their peers, the most common thing I heard was don't blame yourself.
Don't blame yourself anymore. You've done enough. Like you've worked really hard to behave like normal people.
Don't blame yourself too much. Don't push yourself too hard. You can take a gap semester, gap year. That's fine.
不要太把所谓正
Don't
常的
take
暴力
normalcy too seriously. Don't take outside voice too seriously, and you will be in a better mood and state.
The University of Melbourne launched its neurodiversity project last December. Dr. Matt Harrison is one of the team members.
We're doing workshops where we get neurodivergent students to work with staff to co-adapt curriculum to make it more inclusive, and to think about activities we do in class to make them more inclusive. So please don't lose hope, because we see a much brighter future coming very soon.
That story was produced by Shixin Wang. The supervising producer was Mel Chun. All the Best would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we make these stories and pay our respects to elders past and present. All the Best is made at FBI Radio on Gadigal land, in association with SYN and 3RRR on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung lands, and 8CCC on Arunde and Warramungu lands. The All the Best editorial producer is Mel Bakewell, and Phoebe Adler-Ryan is our executive producer. Our social media producer is Isabella Lee, and our social media assistant is Seth Emmerich. Patrick McKenzie is our community coordinator, and Janae Madden is our content assistant. Shining Bird composed our theme music, and Annie Hamilton designed the artwork. We're heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network, and were made possible by the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Community Broadcasting Foundation. You can find our full archive of more than 500 episodes at allthebestradio.com. I'm Madhura Prakash. Thanks for listening.